Hey, Jake, how about the next time you decide to go viral? How about you do it in the middle of a season so that we actually have something to promote?
Yeah, you selfish piece of shit.
I went viral? No, I'm kidding. I definitely paid attention. I'm actually an internet millionaire now. Every one of those views results in so much money for me. I appreciate you running my social media account, otherwise known as 10 Bell Pod. I'm sure everybody thinks you're some sort of a meme site, as opposed to a social media account that is set up for a wonderful, successful, hilarious, dark twist upon professional wrestling. But I'm sure it just looks like some asshole that was like, oh, look at this guy wrestling a 10. It's bullshit, isn't it? Pretty soon you're going to be like those fake accounts that eventually they get all the followers by being a car account and they switch over and they're highly conservative and then all of a sudden they're highly political and then you turn that into fame and then a Fox News correspondent. But I'll try better next time. I will try and control my fame in appropriate amounts. I'm sorry. It's just been boiling for, I don't know, 20 years of looking for attention, and I got it, and sold 2 t-shirts because of it. So great. Excited. Thanks.
Wait, I'm confused. You brought up a Fox News correspondent. What does the Funkasaurus have to do with this? I don't...
Pay attention to our past Patreon episode where Tyler talks about the NWA World title. Wonderful plug right there, but let's save the plug for Patreon at the end of this episode as opposed to the beginning, Tyler. I appreciate it. I know it's the start of a new season, but don't forget, we plug Patreon at the end of the episode, not at the front.
All right, hello, and welcome to Season 4 of 10 Bell Pod. I told you guys we'd do a fall season. We did it. I'm Nick Alexander, joined by stand-up comedian Tyler Wood.
Konnichiwa.
Why?
It was just the first thing that came to mind. I'm sorry.
And we are also joined by the viral sensation of the nation, the Man Scout Jake Banning.
Guten Tag. Is that what we're doing now? Is that what we're doing in Season 4? Is saying hello in different languages? I think that's what we're doing now. We talk about the Patreon at the beginning of the episode, and we come up with different languages to say hello. Welcome to Season 4, ladies and gentlemen.
Flair has dicks all over his robe or something.
Then,
Sounds good. Book it.
now,
Let's fucking keep that in. Yeah, let's keep that shit in. Let's let that ride. Yeah, fucking Jake's the problem because he's repeating a line, and I don't feel comfortable saying this, but these are another man's words. But oh, Nicholas over here.
forever.
Today, we are talking about a guy that was universally loved by everyone he came in contact with. Someone who was part of one of the coolest factions of the 2010s, even though WWE ruined it at every chance they got. And definitely someone who had a lot more to give to this industry, Brodie Lee and or Luke Harper.
Brodie Lee, a fantastic big man wrestler. A lot of people think that, got a lot of influence from Bruiser Brody, and that's true. There's definitely a lot of influence on his style, not actually where the name came from. Nick, I'm sure you'll have some more information on that later. But Brodie Lee, Luke Harper, was a mainstay in arguably the best time for American indies. And what I mean by that is like the time frame that built into the renaissance that we've seen of today. He was right there in the middle of it, part of Chikara and Evolve, gave Sapolsky's second endeavor after Ring of Honor, and just a fantastic big man all the way through getting signed to WWE, and I'm a big fan, and I'm happy to be covering him with you guys.
You said best time for the indies, and then you said most influential, like as far as artistically. And I go, good, because payoffs were not that great during that time. So when you said best time for the indies, I'm like, clearly you're not talking about payoffs. And
no,
merch.
not at all. Everybody loved it, and you had to love it because that shit was not paying at the time, right, Jake?
This is true, and during this time that he was around on the indies, you would have thought that we would have saw each other a whole bunch of times, or we would have been in some weird scramble match or some multi-man match or a six-man tag. But believe it or not, I actually have very limited or next to none interactions with John, with Brodie. I have very limited amount of time with him. I think I might have been in the same building with him a handful of times, but I work at a company that still feels his loss every day, every show, on a constant basis. But I knew very little about him. I had very little interactions with him. So I'm very excited to do this episode and learn more about him, discuss him more, because every day that we discuss him is just another day we can kind of keep his memory and his being and his spirit alive. And it's most certainly done through the company that I work for, and I will gladly do it here on 10 Bell Pod.
Jonathan Huber was born December 16th, 1979 in Rochester, New York. John was a wrestling fan growing up, loving old school WWF and people like Jake the Snake and Ravishing Rick Rude, but he said when he found out who Bruiser Brody was, it changed his life. He was also a big tape nerd. He'd grab all the early Ring of Honors, anything with Terry Funk, anything with Chris Daniels, and of course Bruiser Brody. So his love for wrestling is lengthy and legit.
And living in upstate New York, I mean, he might see a WWF house show. We might see a taping of Raw every once in a while. There might be a couple indies here and there, but for the most part, you know, he's about the same age as me. So he really had to hunt for wrestling. Like, he had to hunt down those VHS tapes. You know, if he had cable, great, he was in a good position. But if he was like a kid like me growing up, you had to have your friend who had cable record the wrestling show and bring it to you to school the next day. So you're watching Monday Night Raw on a Tuesday. And eventually I became that kid that would record Monday Night Raw and give it to my other friend who didn't have cable. So he grew up in that generation where if you loved wrestling, you had to really hunt for it. You know, living in some place like upstate New York, you know, he's probably had very limited opportunities to see it live. And I'm sure he took every advantage he possibly could.
Upstate New York, actually, I'm dating a girl that is from Rochester, funny enough, and I went up to visit her family for Christmas. A great time to watch wrestling tapes is when you're buried under 15 feet of snow every winter, so great place to sit in there, hone up on some Japanese stuff. Jake, I wanted to ask, how different do you feel that indie wrestlers from the time when you started and Brodie was breaking into the business, how different do you feel like the indie wrestlers of that time were built, either mostly like psychologically, maybe a little physically, than the guys of today?
Oh, I feel like I'm pretty out of touch. Like, I feel like I was a little in touch with the generation after me, maybe the generation after. The generation's coming out now. I feel so disconnected right now. Like, I don't even know what would have got them into all of this and what they see. And I feel like there's a lot of echo chambers in wrestling. It feels very weird to me. Like, you have a lot of schools and guys just wrestle for their fed that's associated with their school, and those school feds like run 2 or 3 shows a month or 2 shows a month, and to those guys that's more than enough. Maybe they'll do the sister promotion or the next promotion over, and that's it. And they think, oh, I wrestle 3 or 4 times a month, and that's great. But that's not how you do it. When I first got in and when Brodie got in, it's all about, I want to wrestle in Philadelphia, I want to wrestle in Florida, I want to wrestle in Tennessee, trying to get your name out there. And that's what your thought process is, where I feel like a lot of guys, they get either brainwashed and told that it's okay to just wrestle for your home fed. But I feel like the thought process was always get out, go do as many shows as you can, and use this as an opportunity to see the world, which Brodie most certainly did.
So John played lacrosse for 4 years in high school. He looks like he also did a little hockey, like rec league hockey. So he has this athletic base to accompany what would become his 6'5", 275 body. Add to that, he did a little backyard wrestling. And I don't know his actual role, but I'm going to say wrestling journalist. Chris Harrington was part of his group, and Chris's crew ended up getting an actual ring and began running shows out of a karate dojo.
Chris Harrington, who is now one of the people I deal with on a daily basis at All Elite Wrestling. So it's very weird that, you know, from such small beginnings, you find yourself working for one of the biggest companies, wrestling companies in the world. That's the interesting thing about professional wrestling, is people that you meet at a National Guard Armory show or somebody you did a fair show with, and all of a sudden you find yourself working for a company that broadcasts on Turner Broadcasting every Wednesday and Saturdays, and making deals with New Japan Wrestling, lining things up with Wembley, lining things up with global networks, making sure that we're broadcasting in India. And yeah, so, Chris Harrington is actually somebody who I know quite well, and it wouldn't surprise me that he was had an entrepreneurial spirit and trying to push forth wrestling the best he possibly could, even at such a young age. That's the person I know today, and that's who he was probably at that time as well.
Even though they have a ring, this is all untrained, by the way, just to let you know. But this is what we're calling John's debut in what they called Rock City Wrestling. And John debuted as Huber number 2. Huber number 1 was his brother, but he just reffed, so I don't know what happened there. Brodie said in his 2012 shoot, hosted by Eddie Kingston, that he made his wrestling debut for Rock City Wrestling September 2001 in a 6-man tag that was, quote, god-awful. He backed this up in a 2020 AEW podcast. I'm obviously side with Brodie here. Wikipedia says 2003, but as we approach 100 episodes of 10 Bell, I've literally never seen a Wikipedia have even 33 and 1/3% of information correct. And then you add cagematch.net to the mix, your chances of being right drastic go down. Samoa Joe, the numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster if you're looking up stuff for a wrestling podcast. Thank you.
You're welcome. The audience is welcome as well. That's another thing too, is if you go back to the thing of the different generations now, if you want to go do it, you just Google wrestling schools. Where back in 2001, 2003, trust me, I was trying to Google wrestling schools and they were all in California or Ohio Valley Wrestling, and that was about it. And all of a sudden you found something an hour and a half away. I'm like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. And then come to find out they're no different than the people that had the ring set up in their backyard. They're just a backyard fed that has a ring now. They just had somebody they can make a website. A lot of guys started that way. Not only was wrestling footage not accessible, training in wrestling was also, it was more accessible than it was during the 60s and 70s. At the same time too, it was very DIY.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why I love that era of wrestling so much, is because it's just, people loved it so much they made it happen.
Brodie would officially get trained by sick Rick Matrix out of Rochester, New York. Kirby Marcos and Tony Marmaluke also get some credit for helping train Brodie. From there, he'd start cutting his teeth in the smaller indies, mostly hanging around the Northeast U.S. He was hitting promotions like World of Hurt Wrestling, Keystone, JWA, and Far North Wrestling. And during that journey, he switched his name over to Brodie Lee. We said he loves Bruiser Brodie, but the name is actually a reference to Mallrats and is a combination of Jason Lee and his character, Brodie Bruce, apparently given to him by Lit from Special K, if you remember them from Ring of Honor. I would have lost so much money that it wasn't a Bruiser Brodie tribute. I can't believe it. Brodie's early gimmick was the right stuff, Brodie Lee. His character was a b-boy. Brodie would walk out to New Kids on the Block, the right stuff.
Dude, you see some of the footage of him from this, and he is in the character. He is giving 110% to this gimmick.
If you look at everything he's done, he's always given 100% of anything. Also, too, he's 6'5". You think if he's not into something, he's going to do it? Come on.
March of 2007, Brodie would debut in what is now a very complicated promotion to talk about, Chikara. Before it was ousted that Quack and Douche was not a good person, I love Chikara so much. I remember watching this for the first time and thinking, whatever the fuck this is for me. It's literally the promotion I would show to people to be like, look how cool and fun wrestling is, right? I don't think we've ever really got to talk about Chikara on here. And if we have, it's very rare. So what are your thoughts on Chikara?
When I was I say very young, when I was a teenager emailing Jake at High Spots, asking them when they were going to bring their promotion back around where I lived, I was sustaining myself wrestling wise on whatever horseshit WWE was putting out, TNA up to a point, and I was heavy into Ring of Honor, and I was heavy into the lore of Chikara. I was watching the podcast to go every week. I wasn't paying for the DVDs, but you got a match a week of just their crazy gimmicks. It was a style that was separate from any other indie promotion in the US. They were very heavy character based, and I loved it so much that it was on the short list of places that I wanted to train when I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I really respected Mike Quackenbush and what he can do from a technical perspective, but I just love that they were creating a universe of characters like no one else besides WWE was doing, but they were doing it in a way where it was over the top, it was funny, it was silly, but at the core of it, there was still a lot of great wrestlers doing a lot of good storytelling. I mean, it's silly, but they were giving their all to it. They were giving their all to the storytelling, and they were giving their all to the wrestling. I've never seen a Chikara match where someone was not giving 100% trying to entertain 20 people at a National Guard armory in Pennsylvania.
Oh, geez, you done gushing, Tyler, so I can talk? No, I work with a lot of guys right now that got their start in Chikara, and you talked about it, like, complicated to talk about it. Well, I think if you just kind of take out the complicated part and throw it away and just focus on the wrestling and the people that were there that were doing it, that had a passion for it and cared about it, like you listen to somebody like Eddie Kingston talk about it. He talks about passionately and what he gave to it, and, you know, like his heart for it, much of the way Orange Cassidy and a lot of other wrestlers, the way they talk about it affectionately. And I'll be honest, like, I wish I could have been in the mix with a lot of those wrestlers. The way that I go about the Man Scout character would have fit in what they were doing. Like this over-the-top lore. Like, I had a year-long feud with a camping tent. And if that happened in Chikara, it could have been something that a lot of people would have seen, not something that people discover on an Instagram page 4 years after it fucking happened, when it was put into highlight form by some douchebag who was running a wrestling podcast. But it was a lot of people's first opportunity to have fun with professional wrestling. It was to break away from, you know, what we were told at the time, because there was still a lot of the old school mentalities were there. There were still discussions of, if you put your hands up and you're in a chair shot, you're a pussy, and, you know, we get to chop the shit out of the new guy, and like, oh, you got a girlfriend, that won't last long, and all the things that just really suck about professional wrestling, and all the things that suck the life out of it, and like tell you your matches have to be this, they have to be fit in this box and be done this particular way. And someplace like Chikara takes a bunch of young and talented wrestlers and gives them an open canvas to play with. That's what it was for them. And I think a lot of those wrestlers miss and are saddened that there's not a place like that anymore.
Brodie would debut in the promotion March 24th, 2007 at Time Will Prove Everything, using the Right Stuff Brodie Lee gimmick, taking a loss to Equinox. Brodie actually wasn't on the card that night, but as we know, that shit is subject to change. Brodie was hanging out with the Olsen twins, not from Full House, even though that would have been really cool if they were like wrestling Tia and Tamara or something. That would have been real fun. But Reckless Youth did not show up, as his name is not Responsible Youth. So Quack,
watch your mouth. Watch your goddamn mouth about fucking Tom Carter, okay? Like, should be fucking thankful that man even thought about taking that booking, okay? So keep fucking Reckless Youth's name out your fucking mouth. He is this generation in which we are talking about Scott Casey. I'm wrapping him in Scott Casey bubble wrap that you cannot talk bad about Reckless Youth.
Quack asked Brodie if he had his gear on him. He did, and that was that. His match went well enough because between indie dates throughout the rest of 2007, Brodie would keep on getting spots. Also in late 2007, Brodie would start working for CZW. So he gets that, Chikara rub. Then with experience and some reps and getting in front of the right people, he's starting to climb that indie ladder. By this point, Brodie had changed up his look to a more Luke Harper looking style. He's wrestling in a tank and jeans. He grew his beard out.
It was the big rig. He was like, the big rig, I believe is what he was called.
April 11th, 2008, Brodie debuted in IWA Mid-South, beating BJ Whitmer, and then the next day Viking. And get this shit, Ian Rotten paid him.
Oh my God.
Not well. I can guarantee, I wasn't there. I don't know what he got, but I guarantee it was not well. Just because you give somebody $20 doesn't mean you should be grateful.
Back over in Chikara, April of '08, Brodie started bullying smaller wrestlers, so he'd eventually get called out by Switzerland's favorite son, Claudio Castagnoli. This led to what Eddie Kingston called the best feud in Chikara history.
It's the best feud ever, dog. It was fucking, you couldn't fucking top it. When fucking Claudio fucking came with that fucking dick, fucking bald-headed fucking geek came in, and you were the goddamn big rig. It was just like fucking two bulls fucking going face to face. Oh shit, bro. I was fucking on that shit. That's some goddamn fucking tape shit I'd fucking see, man. It's fucking right up there. Misawa, fucking Kawada. That's what I'm fucking talking about.
Their first match was on April 20th, and this ended in Claudio being DQ'd for accidentally kicking the ref. The rematch, May 24th, ended the same way, but this time Brodie kicked the ref. Solve this, July 13th, they had a no DQ match, kick the ref, fuck him. Brodie won that, but only after interference from Shane Hawk and Mitch Ryder. So this led to the big blow-off match, September 7th, '08, when Brodie and Claudio faced off in Chikara's first ever steel cage match.
And this is on Chikara's YouTube channel. If you do not want to support that, see what you can do to find it illegally, I guess. But it is on YouTube if you want to check this out. It's a solid match. It's really good. There was blood, and that is very surprising for Chikara at the time, because it was very much like a comic book vibe to it. It's family friendly. You weren't allowed to curse there. It was like kind of a silly, fun time, and then you look in there.
What the
and
fuck
Brodie's
you talking
bleeding.
about, bro? This is a blood fucking feud. It's the only way to fucking end. We got a fucking cage up. If they ain't gonna fucking bleed, why we fucking putting this shit up? We got goddamn students putting their fucking life on the line. Put fucking 4 walls of steel up. They ain't gonna fucking bleed. Fuck that.
I want the hard drive that is in Mike Quackenbush's basement. Not that one. The one that has
Choose your next fucking words carefully. Choose your next fucking words carefully. Or else I'm going to click the fucking pen and write down what I should take out of the fucking episode. I'll do a little fucking editing.
I want the one, we may need to cut this. I want the one that's got Eddie Kingston cussing and they have to like restart the interviews in Chikara. I want those. Do you think he like needs a couple to like bring it down to level, or what's the deal?
I'd imagine.
I don't know. I feel like you just film the rehearsal and hope that sticks. But he is on he is on television and he doesn't curse. I think he's been fined only once or twice.
Okay. And that was for punching Sammy Guevara, right?
I was mostly sticking to the cursing. The backstage fights, I've lost count of those. I'd rather keep track of how many times we've cursed on Turner Broadcasting channels as opposed to how many fights we actually have backstage. Because as of right now, backstage fights are winning.
Just let Chuck Taylor say shit. That's all we need.
Between Chikara spots, Brodie was working places like NWA Upstate, CZW, IWA Mid-South, and Squared Circle Wrestling, which is not associated with Reddit, I believe. Brodie would make his Ring of Honor debut October 25th, '08, joining the Age of the Fall stable, helping Jimmy Jacobs beat Austin Aries in an Anything Goes match. Brodie and then stablemate Delirious beat Cheech and Cloudy next, and then ended the night by attacking Necro Butcher. Brodie loved his first match and said it was all downhill from there. He was brought in by Gabe Sapolsky, who had big plans for Brodie having this big feud with Necro, ending in a blow-off in New York, but then Gabe was fired, and that seems to always be an awkward situation, like you're one of the guy who got fired guys. The other people don't necessarily know you or even want you there. But basically, Brodie's ROH run would be a bunch of matches with Necro, and he didn't have the best time.
Yeah, and this is like a weird time in like Northeast Indies stuff, like when you lump Chikara, CZW, and Ring of Honor together, because they're all kind of like loosely working with each other, and guys are doing all those shows. Like you'll see Claudio at a CZW show, you'll see Claudio at a Ring of Honor show, you'll see him at a Chikara show. Same with Chris Hero, Jigsaw. Like, there was no real defining, this guy is a Ring of Honor guy, and this guy's a CZW guy, and this guy's a Chikara guy. And it was kind of, once Gabe left, because Gabe would incorporate all these other places, because he's like, oh, I work for Ring of Honor, and we're in the far superior company. And then kind of the thought process was, World Ring of Honor, we're a far superior company. We don't need you. We have our guys. I don't know if this was the incident that caused it, but you definitely saw everybody kind of separate and have their own ground and be like, oh, I'm a CZW guy. I'm just a Chikara guy. I'm just a Ring of Honor guy. And then those points never really met again unless somebody got fired from another place or had a fight with somebody else or a dispute about money or whatever it was. The landscape started to get very territorial and divided up, but it is wild to look back at some of these results and seeing guys working for all these indies and getting all these really great matches, and then also as you as a company, you're able to brew so many different matches because you're booking all these different people as opposed to just working with the same guys, and it's just different iterations of the same match.
There is a hard cutoff around that time where you see like Jigsaw, Mike Quackenbush, Spider Nate Webb, Brodie, also guys like dipping in. And then there's that hard cutoff, and it almost seems like that was that golden age of the indies, and then it switched over into like a new age because then that Sparks Evolved, Dragon Gate USA, and it's good to see that Gabe stuck with Brodie.
Well, why wouldn't you? The guy's 6'5", he's tremendously talented, he's got a charisma about himself. I think anybody that's ever worked him, even in this time. I never heard stories of like, ooh, wrestling Brodie Lee, you're going to get dick knocked in the dirt. Like, you didn't hear that. Like, oh, easy night. This guy's going to take care of me. He's going to be cool to be around. It's not going to be hard to put the match together. Like, if anything, they talked about very favorably, like, oh, I was wrestling Brodie Lee, and it was so easy. It was so good.
He had so much athleticism as a big dude also. Like, he carried himself like he was over 7 feet tall, but moved so nimbly. That is damn good wrestler.
I was shocked that he was 6'5". I thought he was like 6'10", 6'8",
dude,
6'9", you know.
When you said that earlier, I was like, Nick's got to be wrong. But like, dude, that dude looks like he towers over everyone else.
Taking us into 2009, in March, Delirious turned on Age of the Fall, and on May 30th, he beat Brodie in what would end up being his last ROH match. So nothing too crazy about this Ring of Honor run, but one highlight is he got to wrestle Jerry Lynn, and Brodie was very pumped about that.
Yes, that is also available on YouTube.
In late 2008, Brodie had also formed a stable in Chikara with Eddie Kingston and Grizzly Redwood called the Roughnecks. And I mean, they're no great outdoors or whatever. I mean, they're fine.
Nobody knows who you're talking about. Make a highlight reel about it, and then people will know about something I did 8 years ago.
Backing up just a bit, February 2009, the Roughnecks beat Ultramantis Black, Crossbones, and Sami Callihan to earn a spot in the 2009 King of Trios tournament, but they lost in the first round to Claudio, Dragon, and Dave Taylor.
I've seen that King of Trios. I have it on DVD, beginning to end. Fantastic event.
From there, Eddie went on to feud with Claudio, leaving Brodie and Grizz tagging up. They spent 2009 getting wins over teams like Los Ice Creams, Cheech Hernandez, and Casey Day, and eventually earned themselves a spot at Chikara's tag titles. October 17th, 2009, Lee and Grizzly challenged the Colony for the tag titles, but they were beat in 2 straight falls. Did y'all motherfuckers know Fire Ant was Orange Cassidy?
Yes.
I just found that out a couple weeks ago, and it like shook me to my core.
He will never admit that, and nobody will ever admit that I know of that know that. So, Tyler, go ahead and click that pen, and go ahead and have that, and write that down, and we're going to take that out, and that's not going to be on here. How about that?
Yeah, I hear one goddamn thing about El Generico. I will throw a fit also, all right? You hear me, Nick?
After losing the tag title shot, Brodie blamed Grizzly for the loss, so on October 19th, 2009, Brodie turned on Grizz, kicked him in the face. Jake, how did you break up with Grizzly?
He just quit wrestling. That's kind of how that happens. You hang around Jake Manning and you want to quit the business. That's why all my tag teams don't last. In fact, Dax Hardwood is the only one who hasn't quit wrestling. That was a former tag team partner of mine.
Did you run Dan the Dad out yet?
Not yet, but he's definitely probably contemplating life.
Brodie debuted for Evolve January 16th, 2010 at the promotion's first ever show in a 6-man tag match. Back home in Chikara, Grizzly made a comeback in April when he surprised Brodie for a match, and Brodie just squashed him. But this led to a kind of a feud going on between them that would take them through the year. In May of 2010, Brodie made his debut in Dragon Gate USA, defeating Cheech Cloudy, Kyle O'Reilly, Atlas, Extremo, Brent B, and Anthony Fiasco.
I feel like I was at this match. If this is in Massachusetts, then I was definitely there. This is when I was selling merch at the shows, and that's kind of how I ended up on the show. Same way that Brodie ended up on the show and it working out for him. I ended up on the shows, and Gabe just hated my existence in his promotion. But yeah, I remember him being there, and I think this is like one of the few times I was actually in the same building as him. So,
okay.
Like I said, I remember him being nice and might have shook my hand. Might have been the first time I ever met him. But I remember him being in some scramble match and it being a good match. So, and him being kind of the story of it all. And I remember him winning. So maybe this is this match. And this is the first time I ever saw him.
All right.
Met him.
Nick, you said this was 2010?
Yeah.
That one was in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. But they were in Fall River, Massachusetts 5 months later. And Akibono and Brodie Lee defeated the Osirian Portal. So, Jake, I believe that's where that happened.
That's where that happened.
Yep.
Okay. Fall River, that sounds about right.
There you go.
Thank you. Crack historian right here of 2010. I will defer to you. Now, if it is 1979 or 1983 Memphis, we'll defer to what I have to say.
It is also from Cage Match, so that has an asterisk. We don't really know for sure if this is true.
Okay. That feels about right.
Brodie would spend his time in Dragon Gate facing people like Jimmy Jacobs, Rich Swann, and Kyle O'Reilly. He would stop back over in Evolve in July to wrestle to a no contest with Jon Moxley. Throughout the rest of 2010, Brodie was also wrestling in like Jersey All Pro, where he wrestled people like Nick Gage and Eddie Kingston. He won their heavyweight title, but it was stripped for not defending it for 9 months. Jack Tunney is always watching. Rolling into 2011, Brodie lost a CZW World title shot to Jon Moxley. But in 11, it's all the same. It's more Chikara, bouncing over the Dragon Gate, sprinkling in something like an Alpha One. He's doing it.
This is my favorite time in indie wrestling. This is it. I think this is where it peaks, but I know I am probably also just a victim of the indies when you were growing up. It's like SNL. The SNL that was on when you were in high school, that's the best one. I feel like it's the same thing going on here. But I'm like hearing you list all these people and thinking about like this time and like nobody had, $400 or $500 gear on the indies. Like all these people were buying stuff from high spots. It's like there's no real gimmick to their tights or anything. Everybody's just in there with these old ass busted wrestling boots. They're traveling all over the place and it's awesome.
And we can most certainly talk shit about High Spot's gear now, so I appreciate you getting that dig in. Previous hosts have made jokes like that, and I chastised them. Now that's not the case. If anything, you'll be applauded for such thing.
Yes, sir.
But, yeah, you say that, oh, this is wonderful for you as a fan. I remember being, as a wrestler, feeling hopeless because there was no upward momentum.
Mm-hmm.
The same hot indie guys at this level were the same hot indie guys in 2003, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Here we're getting into, 2009, 2010, 2011, and nobody's moving up.
Mm-hmm.
WWE, anytime an indie guy is there that's got a little bit of buzz, they shit talk them. They treat him like shit.
Mm-hmm.
They go, oh, you think you're a big deal because you wrestle in Fall River, Massachusetts, when like they were at that point. Or they weren't at that point. They played football and then they got a contract and now they're here. So they don't even know that life. This was a very hopeless time. And very few people were getting the opportunity to really, really do it the way that Brodie and the rest of them were doing it. Where like, you could email a promoter and they would actually reply back to you. Or, you'd have enough connections so that people would know about you. They're like, we need to get Brodie Lee in here to wrestle. Like being one of those lucky few people that get those opportunities was definitely rare for a lot of people. And John most certainly was one of those people that had the opportunity to wrestle anywhere he liked and do what he loved.
That's why, think to about 06, that's why we have the second coming of Jesus Christ to thank CM Punk when he broke into WWE, paved the way for everybody else. But also, right around this time, Bryan Danielson broke in and laid the groundwork for so many of these talented indie workers to get a job. And that's also what I love about this, is that it's all in that same time frame. And you have talented guys like Luke, Brodie. They are just there. They're primed. They're ready to go. They're ready to make a lot of money. It's right there. He's right there.
2012 is a crazy year for Brodie. Not only did the world end that year, thanks a lot Mayans, but he had his first kid with his wife Amanda, who is also a pro wrestler. Then March 12th, 2012, it was reported that John had signed a developmental deal with WWE. This actually happened the same day his kid was born.
And, family's always been like a big part of John's life. I think we've all learned that. Amanda, I know quite well. I work with on a regular basis, and she'll need something from me because somebody did something stupid in the crowd and we have to make it right with a fan. And she's usually the person tasked with that, making a bad situation correct. And then the person she contacts next is Jake Manning for a T-shirt, a foam finger, or a signed figure of some sort. Somebody does something stupid, Amanda's on the first line of defense, and then the next person she calls is me. So I work with her quite a bit and know her quite well. She works with production now. She talks about John every once in a while, and she'll come up with some sort of story when she used to wrestle, and she always talks about how she wasn't a very good wrestler at all. Like, I'm not saying she was terrible. She has told me many times that she was not a good wrestler at all. But she was around it. She understood the business, but she would always talk about how John was such a dedicated family man. And I think we hear the stories now, but I think it was very self-evident to her before everybody else how good of a family man he was.
I think that also shows, like, we've been talking about how, like, this season's going to be a little newer. It is that change in the mindset of the wrestling business overall. You can be a good dude and it'll be okay.
Yeah. FCW had been WWE's developmental territory since June of 2007, but in August 2012, it was rebranded to NXT. After wrapping up his indie dates, Brodie would sneak into developmental just before NXT was a thing, starting out in Florida Championship Wrestling at a house show May 10th, losing to Garrett Dillon.
A lot of guys talk very fondly about that time, and that was the place where the roots of NXT kind of started. Like, anybody that spent any time there, they fondly talk about that time. Everyone that was involved with that, no matter what your experience level was, talks about how something special was happening there at that time. And it's just a laundry list of wrestling superstars that are on the top of their game today, are projected to be Hall of Famers sometime in the future.
Brodie would soon be equipped with a brand new name, Luke Harper. And as we already sort of set up, he had like the Luke Harper aesthetic already, so that was a Brodie thing, not a WWE thing. But he would spend the next couple of months with Eric Rowan for the first time, and then he would face people like Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Big E. And it was going through this part of his story that I really felt the weight of how much of a tragedy this is. Like, I know he wrestled Mox on the indies, but Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Big E, these are people in a time that we haven't talked about in 100 episodes. It just sucks.
Yeah, it's weird when I'm talking about somebody during the come up. Usually when I'm talking about somebody who I met on an indie show, it's on the way down. Rarely do we talk about somebody that I'm like, oh, I remember when he was coming up. This season is going to be a lot of that, and it's going to be very, very weird to talk about. That's going to make this season really tough.
November 7th, 2012, Luke Harper made his NXT TV debut as a follower of Bray Wyatt, the first son of the Wyatt family. Hey everyone, I just wanted to jump in real quick and say that we recorded this before Bray Wyatt's shocking and tragic passing. Not that we say anything bad about him. Bray was a genius, a great worker, seemingly a great dude. Terribly sad. I just want to say, if you're wondering why we're not addressing his passing, it was just that we recorded this before it. But yeah, we will eventually cover Bray. But until then, let's get back to Brodie. He would take on little baby Jason Jordan, who does a great job selling for Luke, who just annihilates him. By December, Eric Rowan would be revealed as the third member. So Eric and Luke start tagging together for the first time as the actual Wyatts.
Fantastic gimmick all the way around. Fun, interesting, and it got over like crazy. And this is a fantastic time. We're talking about that magic time in NXT. This was it. This was like taking some of the like character of like, not specifically just Chikara, but like some of the character stuff they were doing in Chikara and all the great wrestlers that were on the indies, and they put them all together, and it's hard not to have gold come from that.
Also, too, like you see them collectively together, and there's kind of this sense of who's gonna beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're all big, bearded, they're intimidating, and then you add this whole like unnerving edge to it that you're gonna need like a super baby face to come in and just even stand toe to toe with them, and just right away it gets your attention.
On the May 8th, 2013 episode of NXT, Harper and Rowan beat Adrian Neville and Bo Dallas for the NXT tag team titles, with Luke getting the pin. A little bit of weird timing because on the May 27th Raw, we would get the first ever Wyatt vignettes. While Brodie didn't mind the actual character, there was like a point of contention between Brodie and Vince right away. Vince saw Luke Harper as like a backwoods, simple hillbilly, and he wanted him to do a Southern accent. And Brodie's like, I'm from Rochester, New York. If I do a Southern accent, it's gonna suck. But Vince wouldn't hear it.
Is it not more frightening to have the large, woodsy-looking man be well-read?
That's what he wanted. And he was like, I'm naturally like a well-spoken guy. Why can't I be the smart monster, the intelligent monster? And just Vince, you have a big shaggy beard, you're a redneck, bada, bada, bada.
You ever heard of the Godwins? It's just, you gotta carry a slop bucket to the ring. That's what you need to do. You want to get over with a beard like that, you carry a slop bucket. And we'll have a match where you throw somebody in a pig pen. That's what we're going to do here. We'll even get Hillbilly Jim to come out to be part of the Wyatt family. It'll be great.
All right, Jake, you're joking. I would watch that. That would be interesting.
So this is a weird thing for Brodie here because obviously cool to get signed by WWE, especially to get bumped up to the main roster. All your hard work paid off, yada, yada, yada. But Brodie is entering a WWE that IMO was about to have some of the worst creative in its history over the next 5 years or so. And all this is going to like put a big damper on Brodie's excitement about joining what should have been this awesome, life-changing step into wrestling glory. And to make it worse, they really had something here with the Wyatt family. Like, I loved Bray. I loved the weirdness of the Wyatt family, the little mix of horror. The entrance was epic. Luke and Eric were perfect. And I think if they let Bray, Eric, Brodie control this is legit one of the biggest things in wrestling history. And for a second, it was. But as we'll get into, they're basically going to fuck this into the ground at every corner.
Then... now, forever.
Now, are they going to fuck this into the ground consensually?
I don't know. Well, why did Vince take a break for a couple of months?
I mean, to grow a mustache. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm clueless on why. Which once again, like, ooh, let's tiptoe around Chikara, but Vince, fuck him, fuck him. We go hard.
Also, if you haven't listened to the 6-parter on Vince McMahon from Behind the Bastards, who called him quite possibly the worst person in history. So check that out if you haven't.
And keep in mind, Hitler's on the table when you discuss that.
Yeah. So before the Wyatts could head to the roster full-time, they had to ditch the tag titles back in NXT. They retained against Corey Graves and Cassius Ohno, but then they dropped them off to Neville and Corey Graves on July 17th. All this is pre-taped, so kind of getting back into real time. July 8th's episode of Raw would open with a Wyatt vignette. Later that night, Kane would beat Christian by wearing him down with QAnon talking points. Then once the bell rings, we get another little Wyatt promo. They come out, they beat up Fake Diesel. It's honestly a cool debut. Luke made his actual in-ring debut July 26th SmackDown, beating Tons of Funk, a Tensai, and a guy who, if you don't like him, you apparently don't like wrestling, the Funkasaurus.
I believe he's referred to as the Fuckasaurus. As Tyler Wood detailed many a times when he discussed the history of the NWA World Title on Patreon.
Somebody call my mama.
This attack on Kane led to the Wyatt family's pay-per-view debut, although Luke and Eric wouldn't be wrestling at SummerSlam that year. Bray had a Ring of Fire match against Kane. Luke and Eric eventually outsmart the Flames by smothering them with some sort of cloth, I don't know. They attack Kane and help Bray get the win. Out the gate, the Wyatts got a nice little push up front with Eric and Luke Harper getting nothing but wins over teams like the Usos, the Primetime Players. Harper and Rowan got their first loss on October 11th SmackDown, getting beat by Cody Rhodes and Goldust when old Stardust catches Luke in a pretty fancy little roll-up pin in the corners. It was pretty nice. On the build to 2013 Survivor Series, the Wyatts would hop into a feud with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. They carried their beef into TLC December 15th as Bray tried to recruit American Dragon into the family, but there Bray, Luke, and Rowan would take on Daniel, which the Wyatts won because it's fucking 3-on-1. It'd be stupid if they did.
He didn't stick around the Wyatts that long because I think it was one of those where they like teased it and then it's actually no, I'm a good guy. I'll never stop being a good guy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's literally it.
It could have lasted. And this was a problem. You're talking about the bad creative in WWE at the time. They had flashes of good things, but they would not let them breathe at all. It is like, okay, we've got this idea. It'll be over in a month. From pay-per-view to pay-per-view. It'll have 4 weeks, and we're going to be rushed to shit. And if anything's good, too bad. Vince has a loose idea of what's going on for the next 4 months, and it's not this.
January 26, 2014, Luke was in his first Royal Rumble match. He tossed out The Miz and Jey Uso before he was eliminated by Roman Reigns. Not much longer after the Rumble, the Wyatts turned their attention to John Cena, and they attacked him during a match against The Shield, where the winner of that match would get to go into the Elimination Chamber. But by attacking Cena, they gave his team the DQ win, which pissed off The Shield. And that leads to a rivalry between the Wyatts and The Shield. I remember this being the first cool thing since like the pipe bomb. The Wyatts and The Shield was fucking awesome. And then, as we'll get to, they fuck it all to hell.
As is the way.
I'm kind of like half in, half out of WWE, and I don't remember it getting to a point that it was going to be The Shield versus the Wyatt family.
I want to say basically you blinked and you missed it.
Yeah. I definitely blinked. I definitely changed the channel. I was definitely watching like All Japan tapes or converting over ECW house footage before it, was sitting in Feinstein's fucking closet and getting pissed on by all of his cats and dogs. I was doing something else, but I just missed this whole feud.
If you feel bad, you had to, much like Andy Dufresne, crawl through a mile of shit for one gold nugget at this time in WWE. There's a lot of great things going on, and there's so many talented wrestlers, but it's marred by it being WWE in the mid-20-teens.
You almost missed a lot of things, I guess, is how I would frame it.
So I missed nothing. That's what I was looking for. So when I was like, you know what? I can't really support this program anymore. Fuck it. I was correct in having that emotion.
Yep.
Great. Cool. We're surprised that an alternative sprouted up.
No, it's because of the constant blue balls that WWE was giving everybody. They wouldn't let anything come to fruition that was a half-decent storyline. So ripe for the picking.
I took so many tolerance breaks around this time. To kind of get over how cool this was, at 2014's Elimination Chamber, for the stare down, the crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." I know it happens. I mean, like Rock Hogan, but that's how big of a deal this was. This match is fun. It is dramatic. The Wyatts actually get the win. But lesson being, these 6 men are over. Mm-hmm. Not just the Shield, but the Wyatts too. This is like one of the coolest things in wrestling for like a week. So we have these 2 factions, literally the hottest thing in wrestling. Oh shit, WrestleMania is coming up. What epic generational wrestling history can we make here? I don't know. Fuck it. Let's put Bray in a match for no title in the middle of Mania with Cena. Not even give Rowan and Luke matches. Job Bray out. And then put the Shield in a meaningless 6-man tag.
Sounds good. Book it.
I mean, that's what happened. Like nothing. Literally nothing. It's so frustrating. All right, so coming out of Mania, Luke and Eric would work a ton of shows, mostly losing on TV and at house shows, topping it off with losses at Money in the Bank and Battleground. Beginning on September 29th, 2014, vignettes were shown of Harper and Rowan being set free by Bray Wyatt. So the Wyatts are breaking up, and Brodie's going to get a shot as a singles competitor, which is really what he wanted to do. So to get Luke ready for his epic singles run, Luke was taken off TV for about 2 months, working house shows, but would eventually get some vignettes aimed at Dolph Ziggler. He'd come back to TV at the end of November 10th's Raw to toss an unconscious Dolph at Triple H and Steph's feet as some sort of sacrifice to the authority. You know how backwoods swamp people love authority. That's why they moved there.
Mm-hmm. Helps with the moonshine, making the moonshine.
The next week, 11-17, Luke would beat Dolph for the Intercontinental title. So it is the 2014 IC title, but it's still cool. Brodie's feelings here, more or less, were, I did the Wyatt thing. Now I'm a singles wrestler. I have a belt. Let's start pitching some cool stuff for my character. He didn't even want to change Luke that much. Like we said, he wanted to be the intelligent monster. He had this idea of almost like a serial killer gimmick where he would collect something from each victim, which, I mean, that's fun. That's good. But no matter what he pitched, Vince was like, play the spoons and blow into a jug.
We can get Hillbilly Jim in to be your manager. That horseshoe that he's got on a chain, put that around your neck, and that's like passing the torch to you. The Hillbilly chain. I know you got jeans on. Is there any way to turn that into overalls? I'm telling you, that's how we're going to make money with these overalls. Gonna take that shirt off, pal. I know I'm doing a bit from a different podcast right now, but the logic is sound no matter where you go. Just take that shirt off and put these overalls on. I know what hillbillies are, and you're a hillbilly. I can see it.
Luke would be on Team Authority at the main event of Survivor Series, taking on Team Cena. LOL, Team Cena wins. Luke spent the rest of November and December mostly getting DQ wins while defending his Intercontinental title before he lost it back to Dolph at December's TLC. So our guy had about 27 days of hope. Hopping into 2015, Harper stopped by the Royal Rumble to not win the Royal Rumble. And by early March, he was involved in a storyline where he was like one of the wrestlers stealing Bad News Barrett's IC title. I think they were stealing from each other. I don't remember this really. But this set up a big match at WrestleMania. So he's getting, a match at WrestleMania. That's cool. Daniel Bryan wins it. Fun match. Luke gets a WrestleMania on the boards. Yay to all this. Following this match, Luke just started taking a shitload of losses to Dean Ambrose and Ryback on TV, pay-per-views, house shows.
Oh my goodness.
So shooting down basically every idea and not having anything better, Vince was like, fuck it, do the Wyatt thing again. So he'd tag with Rowan again, and when Eric got hurt, he'd be back over with Bray, and Luke would get involved in Bray's feud with Roman Reigns. This led to a tag match with Harper and Wyatt fist fighting Roman and Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam, which they lost after Reigns pinned Bray. The next day, Braun Strowman joined the Wyatt. So Vince has a new bearded toy to play with, so Luke is going to get further discarded. They did win a 6-man at Night of Champions, so that's good, I guess.
Oh boy, I am not a fan of Braun Strowman, I'll tell you that. His comments...
I was never on board either.
His comments when the pandemic started about indie wrestlers fucking pissed me off. Just shitting on indie wrestlers for not making a lot of money when the pandemic started. That's the gist of it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, just... I guess their bootstraps weren't pulled off tight enough to, be prepared for a pandemic coming in.
Building to 15's Survivor Series, the Wyatt started a feud with the Brothers of Destruction. The young up-and-coming Kane and Undertaker would get their first career-defining win. The next big feud would be the Dudleys, along with Tommy Dreamer and Rhino, and the booking committee was kind enough to give the Wyatts a win at TLC. Harper would once again be in the Royal Rumble in 16, getting tossed out by Brock Lesnar, but later the Wyatts would come back and attack Brock, eliminate him, which led to a 2-on-1 match at Roadblock, which Brock won. Then things get worse for Brodie. March 21st, 16, he suffered a pretty brutal injury at a house show when he dislocated his patella and tore his MPL in his knee. That would put him out till October. And then logistically, I thought this was really weird. He returned October 5th. He would tag with Kevin Owens to lose to Sami Zayn and Seth Rollins at a house show in Chile. And then 4 days later, he has to work at No Mercy in Sacramento, California. What the fuck is the point of that?
I don't know, just to see if his knee can wrestle just fine. I feel like you can do that in Des Moines, Iowa. I don't know.
Like Performance Center?
Yeah, or there, I don't know. Yeah, this is all weird. Everything you've brought up and talked about, it washes over. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is clearly like, well, I have a family. I got this paycheck. They make action figures of me. Mm-hmm. There's stuff with my face on it. I think I'm just going to kind of keep doing it because that's all the option that someone like this had at the time. Yeah, they're hiring more indie people, but do they even really know what to do with anybody? And I guess I do this until The ringmaster throws away this circus elephant, and he finds a new circus elephant to lift up the poles. That's pretty much the fate that he's dealing with right now until some other company.
At No Mercy, Luke would help Bray beat Randy Orton by distracting him, and we're getting into the Orton Wyatt kind of shtick, if you remember that from around this time period.
Hated it.
Nope, nobody does. Move it. Move on.
I remember it. I hated it because Randy didn't dress like them. That was so
Yeah.
frustrating.
What the fuck you talking? No, he did. He put a vest on like them, and he spent a lot of money for it. Apparently, he spent like $800 or like $1,000 to get that vest made. So
Why?
Yeah.
Dude, it's just
Yeah.
regular looking leather.
It's like tailored, and it's got some weird shit in it that you
It's-
can't see because it's on a wide camera when you wear it. I don't fucking know.
It's tailored. His tits are out. Like, why is it tailored? Like, what?
It's like special, and he spent a lot of money on
dude.
it. That's all I know about that vest.
Oh, I hope he hears this and knows that thing is the most infuriating thing I've ever seen him do in a ring. It's like he's a part of the Wyatt family, refuses to wear any denim. He's like, no, dude, I got these abs for a reason. We're going to show these off.
I love Randy, but I hated this shit.
He's out of place. He's out of place. It makes no
Yeah.
sense. And like, I remember watching an episode of this, and it's like, he's trying to genuinely be a part of it, but he's in his Randy Orton gear.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, yeah, that's why it sucked. It was just
Because
weird.
it's supposed to be a cult. And it's like, yeah, you could
Yeah.
come in, but just be you. That's fine.
That's not how cults work. Like, you have to be part of us on every level.
Getting through this real quick. They win the tag titles. You can Freebird rule it. Randy and Luke end up losing the titles. They get into a fight. Luke never trusted Randy. He was trying to convince Bray, yada, yada. He accidentally super kicks Bray. Next match, Bray fucks up Luke with his sister Abigail, and boom.
See, all of this could have been avoided if he just would have assimilated. Then he would have trusted him, and then they wouldn't have fallen apart.
Skip it ahead. 2017 Royal Rumble. Harper's in there again to get eliminated by fucking Goldberg. God damn it. I hate WWE. Randy wins the Rumble. January 31st, he turns face. He has John Cena's back when Orton and Wyatt run up on him. So that's new. Face turn, maybe get a little shot in the arm as a good guy. That's neat. That's fun. 2017 Elimination Chamber, beat by Randy Orton. So not a good start. Then on February 28th, 17, Harper faced AJ Styles for the #1 contender spot for Wyatt's title. And that's potential. All right, the ex-cult leader versus the escaped new Turnley babyface. But not only does Luke not win, he not only gets pinned for 3, but his foot was on the rope. So they restart the match so that he can get pinned for 3 again. And Brodie said that this was the point where he was like, yep, we're done here. He'd be on to Mania 33's Andre Battle Royal, which he got chunked out by Titus.
Ara.
Following Mania, he hopped in a feud with Eric Rowan, which he won a match at Backlash, so that's good. He'd be in a Independence Day Battle Royal for the #1 contender spot for the U.S. title. He did this spot, I think with AJ, where they both were supposed to fall out of the ring at the same time, but they fucked it up, so they had to fix it with editing. I say that to say this. He spent the next 4, almost 5 months doing nothing but house shows and dark matches. And in those non-TV matches, it was like very obvious that he was over. He was getting like really good crowd reactions. He just never got love from The Office.
You turned down my overalls idea. You turned down you being managed by Hillbilly Jim and getting the horseshoe around your neck. I've got nothing for you.
And in the middle of this tongue lashing, Vince looks down on a table. There'd been some work done in the office. What does he see? A mallet. He goes, aha!
Yes.
Aha! I know how to fix ya. Get that redheaded fuck back in here.
Yes, October of 17, they formed the Bludgeon Brothers. Luke's name was shortened to just Harper, like some sort of millennial's daughter. Eric loved the idea. I actually thought the Bludgeon Brothers were pretty cool, but Brodie was not super on board. He wasn't into like the whole Viking shtick. He thought it was like too over the top. Vince wanted the Bludgeon Brothers to be a cover of Demolition, who was a cover of the Road Warriors. Like, creative literally showed them Demolition and said, be this. Like, Vince had 2 years in the 80s and 2 years in the 90s where he was a creative genius, and everything else is just recycled, I swear to God.
I want you to be Dokken, okay? Which is just a knockoff of Van Halen, which is just a knockoff of Led Zeppelin, okay? I want you to be Dokken. What's so hard about that?
The gear did a lot to hurt this.
Okay.
I think if they had something, because you're like, they're trying to rip off Demolition. Don't do the Demolition outfit, but like,
don't you kink shame somebody. If you want to do the Demolition outfit, do the Demolition. Let that freak flag fly. I don't care.
Yeah,
don't shame somebody. For
no,
that,
I'm not trying to shame.
The team would return. They get a couple wins over the Hype Bros. They'd win at Clash of Champions against Breezango, which was Tyler Breeze and Fandango. So, okay, getting a little heat behind them. They look kind of cool, arguably. They're getting some wins. They start feuding with the fucking tag champs, the Usos. They're in there with the New Day. If you remember this time period, New Day was over as shit. Yeah. That led to a 3-team tag title match at 18's WrestleMania 34, and the Bludgeon Brothers won. So, like, oh shit, is this it? Is this the thing that, like, Luke latches onto and finally, like, carves out his spot? Following this epic WrestleMania career-defining moment, they beat the Usos at the Greatest Royal Rumble, and then were off TV for, like, a month.
I think about all the people that are getting into wrestling now. And, like, I'm so jealous of them because they've had, like, good WWE storylines. They've had AEW. If you start watching the last 5 years, you've had, like, good wrestling on television. And you don't know how much being a fan at the time just felt like that scene from the Ballad of Buster Scruggs where they look over, they're at the gallows, and they go, first time. That was every time something good happened in WWE around this time period. You would have your balls tickled for 3 weeks, and they go, hey, fuck you, not happening.
By July 2018, someone in creative was like, oh shit, don't we have tag titles? So they'd start getting more dates, even beating Hell No at Extreme Rules, but, they're not getting like a cool featured spot. Then they run into some really bad luck. So the Bludgeon Brothers lost a match at SummerSlam against the New Day, keeping the titles. It was a DQ. But unfortunately, in this match, Rowan tore his bicep. So 2 days later, August 21st, at a SmackDown taping, the Bludgeon Bras had to drop their titles to the New Day in a no DQ match, ending their title reign at 135 days. Eric was tough sumbitch in both the SummerSlam match and the SmackDown taping, just dynamite kidding the fucking belts off to the New Day with a torn bicep.
See, I like this. Why can't I get more of this? Or you're hurt. And you shouldn't be performing, but you go out there and you do it for me, and you please me. And why can't you do more of this? This is more of what I want. Break your body down because you love something that I just like making money off of.
Just to pile on to the problems, in October, Harper had to get a wrist surgery that put him out to early 2019. Harper returned to in-ring action, beating Mojo Riley at a house show at his hometown in Rochester, which is nice to let him get a win there. Usually in your hometown, Vince makes you wear the diaper and deny the Holocaust.
That's because he probably was smart and told him, like, I'm actually from Orlando, Florida. So,
nah, he's from the South.
You're from Boone, North Carolina. I know it. I can smell it on you.
He was in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, WrestleMania 35. He got chunked out by Braun. And then on April 16th, Brodie hit his breaking point. His words were basically like he just wanted to wrestle while his body was okay enough to still wrestle. And he requested his release from WWE as he was yet to be on TV for quite a while. And I looked at a good old cage match. I don't even think he was getting house show dates. I think he was just at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the way this went down is they had actually added 6 months to his contract for the wrist surgery. On top of that, though, a few people had recently asked to be released from WWE. So they denied Brodie's release because they didn't want it to look like it's the fucking Misawa Exodus with everyone just like dipping. So Brodie was basically paid to sit home.
This is one thing I will never forgive WWE and Vince McMahon for doing. Is fucking Brodie out of a good 4, 5, 6 months. And now, given what we know, the hindsight's 2020, like knowing that he did not have a lot of time left and that Vince fucked him out of the joy that wrestling brought him, it makes me so angry. that piece of shit did it. And they were letting people go left and right. And honestly, I do think it was like a personal vendetta probably Vince had against him. He had probably been like trying so hard to make something work. And I can see the WWE office being vindictive about something and being like, oh, you talk to us too much. You've bothered us. We're going to make you sit at home. You really want to wrestle? You really want to wrestle? No, you're going to sit at home. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, or like, oh, you should be grateful that we're giving you a paycheck. Why are you going to sit there and complain when we're giving you a paycheck just to sit at home? There's some sort of act they wanted to grind, and unfortunately they did it with Brodie. But it did produce one of the funnier things for quite some time on social media. And one of the few things that I like about social media that still sticks with me today, because they were releasing a lot of people at this time, like left and right, and it seemed to happen at the same day. So it became a meme to Brodie in which he said, "It's Wednesday, and you know what that means," meaning there's more people getting released by WWE. Thinking that like he would be able to say that I'm a part of this next wave. He would do it to a point and it would make me chuckle every time that I saw it, just to be a part of whatever releases were coming out the way. And of course you would see that he's not a part of it.
So September 15th, Brodie would be back, at least on TV, at Clash of Champions. It wasn't an actual match. Luke Harper, he got to use that name again. He popped back up to attack Roman during his match with Rowan. On the following SmackDown, Harper ambushed Daniel Bryan. They got interrupted by Roman Reigns. They both beat him up, and this led to a match at Hell in a Cell, which Luke and Eric lost. By now, like, the Viking Raiders had shown up, which was kind of like the Bludgeon Brothers. Bray was in his Fiend era, so they didn't even have like the Wyatt family to fall back on. Then, as part of the 2019 draft, Eric Rowan got drafted to Raw with Luke staying on SmackDown, which they didn't tell them that, but that broke them up. This is kind of the official end. Luke's last TV match was the pre-show Battle Royal at Crown Jewel that October. Then he was sent home again because, once again, creative has nothing for you, but also, we know you're leaving. We know you're going to join AEW probably. We're not going to like put the world title on you and put you in Marine 12. While Brodie was sitting at home, WWE kept offering him a contract extension, which sounds insane. They were trying to give him a massive raise just to sit home, but Brodie's thoughts were, I can take this money and in 6 months, I'm still going to be miserable. And getting paid a balls load of money to sit at home is a dream, and it is. But as like a creative, or especially as an athlete who has like a ticking clock on your career, you need that part of you scratched to be happy. And at this point, he had some money in the bank. Like we said, he just wanted to wrestle. Like half of Brodie's issues in WWE was because he gave a fuck and he wanted to wrestle.
Yeah, that's the problem, is if the goal was always just to make a shitload of money, well then find a get-rich scheme. We started wrestling because we wanted to make a living off of wrestling. That was the goal. And you get there and you find out the dream's not exactly as you thought it would be, and you got to compromise this and you got to do this, and well, I'm making money. And then it's to a point like, you know, they say you got a match on Raw and you get ready and you call it and they're like, oh, you got 8 minutes. Okay, cool. Then all of a sudden 6 minutes, then it's down to 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden you're not on the show. And it's like, this is just a fucking cycle. You feel like you have to do something with me because you have a fucking contract with me. And you're just kind of saying I'm going to be in a match. And you're like, sorry, it's 3 minutes. You just feel grateful that you're even on TV for 3 minutes. And then I get this one match where like I actually get to show my stuff and everybody likes it. Everybody loves it. Everybody tells me it's great. But guess what? You don't ever want to see it again. You like that I'm here. You like that I show up every week, but you won't fucking do a fucking thing with me. And it's like, I just want to fucking wrestle on a consistent basis. So something like that, you know, like Brodie probably loved the house shows. All right, at least I'm getting to wrestle. At least I know I'm going to wrestle.
November 26th, Brodie filed for a trademark for Brodie Lee. December 8th, 2019, it was announced that Luke Harper had mercifully been released from his WWE contract.
It's Wednesday, and you know what that means.
From here, Brodie would wait out his 90-day non-compete as we entered 2020, which, if you remember, was a super chill year for everyone. Once his 90-day non-compete was up, Brodie joined AEW. So we've never really discussed AEW for someone we were actually covering. So how does one even wrestle for a t-shirt company?
Am I supposed to answer that? Or you as a bubble on the internet going to tell me how I should do business at this t-shirt company and how we do a terrible job at it? Is that what you're going to do? Well, why don't you make a highlight reel of it and then let me know how many views it gets? How would we do that? You just like kind of glossed over a few things, and Tyler, let's circle back to something which you said, but then let's also circle back to something you just said, Nick. The whole delaying of releasing him, looking at the timeline just makes me now angry, knowing what I know now. Because Brodie was like days away from debuting in front of a live audience. Now we can talk about, how creative AEW was during that pandemic, and I feel like I think a lot of the wrestling companies, they pivoted very well. They did a very good job. And the fact that we even got wrestling during the pandemic, we should all feel grateful for. And some of the wrestling we got was pretty fucking good and amazing and outside the box and forward thinking. But when Hardy's debut in AEW meant more in front of a crowd.
Yep. And
Brodie unveiled as the Exalted One, something that had been teased all the way through here. If they just would have released him a few days sooner, him getting that opportunity to do it in front of a live crowd, because he was supposed to debut in Rochester, New York, and then just the world shut down. It stopped, and he still went ahead with the film promo revealing him as the Exalted One, but it's just not the same. And then his whole run was in front of no crowds. It's insane. And then we just went over the struggles he had with the releases. Makes it that much more of a criminal offense. He could have got a debut in front of a live audience and got live crowds with AEW. But instead, he's making the best he possibly can, doing angles and beating the shit out of Cody Rhodes at Daly's place in front of extras that are paid to be in the audience. So, yeah. A lot of Brodie's friends were there. A lot of people that was friends with him in AEW. Obviously, Chris Harrington's there as part of the staff. Somebody he knew from his backyard days. There's people he knew from Chikara. So this was a homecoming for him. AEW was made for someone like Brodie, and he made it there. But God, the timing was just.
Yep.
I never even thought about that way until we get to this moment right here. Yeah, that's right. Them dragging their feet on releasing him. We missed out on that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the cage match right now just for the reference of the timeline. If they had released him when they originally sent him home in May of 2019, or when he asked for it the first time, he'd have had over a year in AEW.
Jesus.
Yeah. And it would have been in front of a live crowd. And I will never forgive WWE for that. Hindsight's 2020. No one could have known the pandemic's coming. Nobody could have known he was going to pass at the end of 2020. But still, fuck them. Because they were fucking somebody out of doing something they loved just because they could. Just because they're vindictive. Just because the WWE will always be that. I don't care if it's absorbed into some fucking MMA company now. As long as Vince McMahon's black.
Oh, do you think that makes it better? You think it makes it better?
There's more creepy old white dudes at the top to be doing some weird shit they have to pay people hush money for now.
Yeah, like Chick said, Brodie would be revealed as the Exalted One, the leader of the dark organization of Wrestling Brother. He made his official AEW debut March 18th, 2020 on Dynamite. And is it true that it's called Dynamite because it blows?
I'm guessing that will be edited out. I believe that ranks right up there as things that will not exist on this podcast on the final product.
Brodie would go on a nice little win streak to build him up to face Jon Moxley for the AEW strap at Double for Nothing, May 23rd.
Double or nothing, my friend.
My God,
nothing. Double or nothing.
Double or nothing, where he would receive his first loss. So he just can't fucking beat Mox at Indies, AEW.
This is really cool that they've now wrestled I'm sure they wrestled several times on the indies, but like, indies, WWE, and now AEW. That's a really cool like progression of time the indie circuit at that time, amazing place. WWE, where everybody wants to go. And now AEW, that new crown jewel that we didn't have before. This is my first time experiencing a rival large promotion to WWE, and to see that these two guys like loved wrestling all the way throughout, and the reason they came to AEW, both of them, they're both set for life money-wise. They came because they love wrestling and they saw something at AEW that they didn't see anywhere else, and they wanted to go there and build something together, and those guys got to connect. From those days of getting paid fuck all at a CZW show, hot dog and a handshake, all the way to giving us some of the best wrestling of AEW's entire history during a pandemic on top of that.
Over the next couple of months, I think he's mostly cutting promos because he has about 3 matches up until August. They're obviously not running house shows or extra live events because of the whole COVID situation.
Well, and also too, he's the Exalted One. He has the Dark Order around him. The whole thought process is you've got to run your way through the Dark Order to get to him. That's how the whole thing's set up. The tippy top guy, he's in that prime spot, and he's well deserving of it. And everybody that was in the Dark Order, he looked after. Brodie was very hands-on with the Dark Order, and all of those wrestlers have shared their stories about how Brodie touched their lives, from, Alex Reynolds, John Silver, Anna Jay, and everybody else. They talk about how Brodie was very giving of his time and kind to them and helped them, paid for some of their gear, would do anything for any member of the Dark Order. And those guys have tons of stories, and seek them out. They're all over the place on anytime they get an opportunity to talk about him. And some of them it's a little rough to talk about. Like, I remember when Anna Jay came in for a fireside chat when we had her in for a virtual gimmick table at High Spots, and she's like, can I please not talk about Brodie, because I just don't want to get emotional. And this is even just months after, several months, maybe even almost a year after it happened, and it's still very fresh even with her, that this man would be so kind to her in the very early days of her career. So any one of those members of the Dark Order have these really great stories of Brodie being an amazing human being and a wonderful, awesome person to them.
Taking us to August 22nd's Dynamite, Brodie would beat Cody Rhodes in just over 3 minutes to win the AEW TNT belt. After the match, the Dark Order attacks Cody's friends, and this will set up a match between the two squads at September 5th's All Out. Now, is this pay-per-view called All Out because behind TK's booking, everyone will soon be all out of a job? I'm sorry, that's the last one, I promise.
Right pay-per-view, wrong year.
Wait.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have.
Just look. We spent the whole podcast shitting on WWE. I gotta balance it. All right. I'm the host. That's all right.
That's all right. I mean, by the time this comes out, I might not have a job anymore. It's fine. Because Dave Meltzer says I'm bad at my job. I might not have a job because Dave Meltzer said I'm not good at my job. Even though Dave Meltzer has never fucking felt the wrath of Jake Manning, which he will very shortly.
I like the storyline for this season that you're the one that pisses Jake off now. This is fun.
Yeah, it's entertaining to watch, isn't it? It's fun. It's fun. Be on the other side of it.
I'm sorry. Brodie, Colt Cabana, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson end up losing to Matt Cardona, Scorpio Sky, QT Marshall, and the son of a plumber. Brodie put up his Tuesday Night Titans title up against Cody on September 9th's Dynamite, getting a win. And also he beat Orange Cassidy on September 23rd's Dynamite.
Oh, you saved them all for the end. I see what's going on here.
Then October 7th, in what would end up being Brodie's last match ever, Brodie faced Cody Rhodes on Dynamite for the TNT title. Although Brodie lost the belt, and it's obviously devastating that this is his last match, a little bit of silver lining in this being his final match. First of all, it seems to be very agreed upon that this was a great match. But on top of that, one of Brodie's favorite matches ever was Piper versus Greg Valentine, 83 Starrcade, in a dog collar match. This was a dog collar match. So Brodie got to pitch that, actually have his fucking ideas heard and accepted, which is crazy. On top of that, Greg was there, and he told Brodie that he loved the match, like how good it was. Brodie said he left a piece of himself in the ring that night. So as horrible as it is, that is his last match. It's, it's Jordan against the Jazz leaving his hand up after hitting the game winner. Like, it's a good match to, if you have to, go out, I guess.
That's very poetic. I like that.
Following this, Brodie would take some time off for an injury, and all this is going to lead to something that I think we can really only compare to like Jimmy Rave, as far as it being so unexpected, so unfair, so unbelievable. On October 26, 2020 podcast, AEW Unrestricted, Brodie mentioned that he couldn't finish his workout on his Peloton bike. That's obviously a red flag, as Brodie is a pro athlete. He always kept himself in pretty good shape. So right off the bat, everyone assumed COVID, which is the logical thing around this time. But aside from the shortness of breath, he didn't really have any other symptoms at this time. And again, he would test negative for corona, so kind of weird. All this is going to be paraphrasing either Brodie's wife or an article that I assume was also paraphrasing Brodie's wife. So Brodie was eventually hospitalized and diagnosed with bronchitis and allergies, but it felt more like pneumonia. The fever went away, but his oxygen levels severely dropped to the point where he had to be placed on an oxygen machine. By Halloween, he needed to be moved to another hospital, and that's when they decided on the Mayo Clinic. If you don't know, Mayo Clinic, literally the best hospital in the country. His condition at Mayo went back and forth, improving, declining, but things got a lot worse after he had a panic attack in late November regarding a lung transplant. A new infection was in his lungs by mid-December, and that's when the battle became hopeless. It reached a point where a lung transplant was no longer a viable option, and on Christmas Eve, Brodie's wife was notified that John's heart and kidneys were failing. And Brodie was suffering from idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which literally meant that his lungs were scarred up, and the idiopathic part means they don't know why. By the time they got to the hospital, there was no infection that had already been fought off, but there was scar tissue on his lungs. And if you see an x-ray of your lungs, they're supposed to be black on the x-ray. They were completely white because they were so scarred over. So he ended up getting put on ECMO, which is basically a breathing machine, life support, just to like try to give his body some rest and his lungs, some time to heal. But that obviously did not happen. Jonathan Huber sadly passed away at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, December 26, 2020, 10 days after his 41st birthday. So there was just a tremendous outpouring of love from the entire wrestling community. Just 100% of people liked him. And he's a guy that was respected and loved by all. He's going to be missed. But final thoughts on Brodie Lee.
Brodie Lee was a very talented wrestler, it goes without saying. I'm a fan of those guys that love wrestling so much. And I've been talking about the whole episode. Those guys from that indie scene in the early 2000s that were traveling for no money and busting their ass in front of no people just because they loved it. And through his career, all the way through to WWE, I don't think he always loved where he worked, but I think he always loved professional wrestling. I wish he could have had that last little bit to wrestle in front of a crowd, but he came into AEW, beat some ass, and in his short amount of time, and according to Cage Match, I think he had less than 10 matches, or if it's more, it's not by much. It's barely in the double digits, the matches that he had in AEW, but he's left a lasting impact. They turned the meme that Jake was talking about. It's Wednesday night. You know what that means if you tune in to TNT on any given Wednesday night. Or are they on TBS now, Jake?
Both TBS and TNT.
TBS and TNT. You tune into a Turner Broadcasting channel, you're going to hear somebody say it's Wednesday. You know what that means. And that's a tribute to Brodie that they bring every single time. And it's fantastic that even though he was there less than a year, AEW continues to show how much that man meant to not just everybody in that company, but everybody in the wrestling industry.
But this is a huge loss in every way it can be a huge loss. Just listening to his shoots, his podcast interviews, he was just such a warm, funny person. And everyone he encountered liked him, like everyone. Also, similar to Tyler, I love his story. He wasn't someone that came from a different industry or sport and saw wrestling as a last resort. He was a full-blown wrestling nerd. He went from backyard to small indies. He grinded his way up to the big indies. He finally made it to the top working for both big wrestling companies. And even though WWE like grossly misused him and the Wyatt's family as a whole, the Wyatt is literally, it's one of my favorite things in the last 10 years of wrestling. Like I loved it so much, and he was right there in it. I think that he could have taken what he learned in WWE and mixed it with some old school Brodie, and he would have been something really special in AEW. It's such a tough loss. It's so unfair to Brodie and his family, his friends, but for the wrestling industry, it's a tremendous loss.
The spirit, the essence of Brodie still hovers over AEW. As Tyler said, it's how we start every Dynamite. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. And every pay-per-view, it's Saturday or Sunday, and you know what that means. And, so you'll see -1 running around the halls. Amanda's works in production now, John's wife. When Brodie King came in, there was discussions of him not being called Brodie because, we had one Brodie and we're not having another. He was seen as that valuable, that important to AEW. And he was a big part of what that company was about, especially during the pandemic. And it's a shame we didn't get to see more of him, and it's a shame we didn't get to see him perform in front of those large crowds that we're getting to experience now these days. And like I said, I didn't have a lot of interactions with him, but I did do a little research and look some things up. And what's nice about social media is sometimes during situations like this, when somebody like Brodie passes away, the internet kind of reminds you why you like this person. And if I was tasked with trying to explain to who Brodie was as a person, I would show them the clip from BTE where he had all of the Dark Order around, and it was during this phase where he was just yelling at John Silver at any turn, at any little thing possible. And I can't remember everything about it, but it had something to do with Sue, Trent's mom, giving John Silver food and him turning it down, or not being respectful to her, or something along the lines, and him just taking this takeout food and slamming it down on the ground like, you show Sue some respect, and you will not disrespect her. And just screaming at John Silver for being rude to Sue. And Trent's mom comes in, says a couple of lines. She's clearly not an actor or a performer, but she's in this skit that they are filming. You could tell she's like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why this man is yelling at this other man. I don't know. And then there's a moment where Brodie's walking her off. And because this isn't professionally filmed, this is just something that's filmed on people's phones, and you can kind of pick up whatever. But here he is. He just got done screaming at John Silver. He's supposed to be mad as possible and escorting Sue off. And you can hear on the audio, you can hear Brodie say, you did a fantastic job. It was wonderful. It was great. No, you did good. You did good. Tried to comfort this poor woman who didn't know what she got herself into. And the whole time he's like, no, you were great. You were great. Fantastic. Awesome job. Thank you so much. He was just kind and took care of this woman who was a mother of a fellow coworker. That's who Brodie was. That's who he was as a human being. And even though I didn't meet him, that's all I need to know about him.
That is the great Brodie Lee's 10 Bell Pod. Thank you for listening. Check out our Patreon, our social media. I've been working really hard on our YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Facebook is what it is. I think I'm out on Twitter, but I'm trying to make these cool, interesting, dumb shit so that we're not so radio silent between seasons or episodes. Tyler, Jake, you got anything before we get out?
Nick, thank you for doing all that, by the way. You're doing a fantastic job with all of that. If anybody has any ideas for any Patreon content you'd like to hear. If you're enjoying the Drunk Wrestling Histories, let us know how those are going. I wish I could have been there for any of them so far, but I haven't been. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing this with you guys, and I'm excited to kick off the next season and bring people some stories about some great wrestlers.
Leave a review. Please leave your reviews. It helps tremendously on all the apps and social media. Let people know what you like, what you didn't like. If you think I should be fired from my job working at AEW merch, put that in there too. So, love you too, David.
All right. Shit, it's 4 seasons. I still don't have a sign-off line.
And that's the bottom line, because Nick said so.
You turned down my overalls idea